The Hunter's Path Through the Veil of Lost Souls, a chronicle of death, desire, and darkness. In the twilight hours of a world that had forgotten how to dream, the veil of lost souls stretched across the horizon like a dark river, flowing with the remnants of forgotten lives. Few dared to tread its mist-cloaked shores, for those who did were often swallowed by its emptiness, lost to the insatiable hunger of the spirits that dwelled within. But there was one who walked its path, the Hunter. A man. Or perhaps something more than man, his soul steeped in the blood of the damned. He had once been a simple wanderer, but that was long ago. Now, his every step echoed with purpose, for he was bound to the veil by a curse, and only one thing could free him, the soul of desire, a phantom that drifted on the wind like a whisper of temptation. His name was lost to time, but those who still spoke of him in hushed tones called him Asir, the hunter of lost souls. His eyes, hollow and black as the night, burned with an unholy fire, for he sought not redemption, but revenge. In the beginning, he had believed the veil was the gateway to salvation. He had ventured in seeking the return of someone he had loved, a woman whose death had torn a hole in his heart. But he found no peace there, only madness, pain, and the shifting labyrinth of souls trapped in eternal limbo. There was a twisted beauty to the veil. The air was thick with the weight of sorrow, a bittersweet scent that clung to his skin like decay. Each step he took carried him deeper into the fog, where the souls of the lost whispered their stories. It was said that the veil was a reflection of the heart, and for Asir, it became a mirror of everything he had left behind. Ghosts of forgotten lives writhed within the mists, their faces contorted in expressions of endless longing and despair. The hunter walked past them, indifferent to their cries, his own desire burning brighter than theirs. But the veil was not just a realm of lost souls. It was a place where desires manifested, shaped by the deepest, darkest corners of the mind. Here, lust, vengeance, and power became tangible. It was a realm where the past was not only remembered but could be relived. And it was here, in the heart of the darkness, that Asir first felt the stirrings of something ancient and forbidden, the soul of desire. It appeared to him as a woman, her skin glowing like moonlight, her eyes pools of ink that reflected the very universe. She was both familiar and strange, a creation of his longing, yet something more. She whispered his name in a voice like silken smoke, promising him everything he had ever wished for: power, immortality, the return of the woman he had lost. But all of it came at a price. All desires come at a cost, she murmured, her voice caressing his soul. You seek to end your torment, but what will you become in the process? Can you still be the man who loved, or will you become something less? Asir's heart thudded with longing, but his mind remained sharp. He had come to the veil with a singular purpose, and he would not be distracted by illusions. But desire was a cunning creature. She wrapped herself around his thoughts, twisting them into knots. He felt the weight of his grief, the ache of his loneliness, and the burning need for vengeance all collide within him. His purpose wavered. The veil, sensing his hesitation, began to shift. The fog thickened, the soul's whispers turning to screams. The path ahead became obscured, as if the very fabric of the realm sought to swallow him whole. But Asir's resolve was iron. He knew what he had to do. Drawing his blade, its edge forged from the essence of lost spirits, he cleaved through the mists, each swing cutting through the illusions that threatened to tear him apart. He sought the heart of the veil, the place where desire's true form lay hidden, a nexus of darkness and temptation. It was there, in the deepest part of the veil, that Asir found her again. She stood amidst the swirling mists, her form shifting, becoming both the woman he had lost and the darkness he had become. The soul of desire smiled, a smile that promised both salvation and damnation. You have come to claim me, she said, her voice an intoxicating melody. But first, you must face the truth of your desires. Asir's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. He knew that his journey through the veil had not been to save a soul, but to understand his own. He had sought revenge, but what he truly desired was peace, closure, and the freedom from the guilt that had bound him to this place. He had been a fool to believe that he could bring back the past. What he truly sought was to escape the cycle of torment that had kept him in the veil for so long. But desire would not let him go so easily. She lunged at him, her form becoming a torrent of shadows and fire. The hunter met her head-on, his sword clashing with the darkness. In that moment, he understood, desire could not be defeated by force. It was not something that could be slain. Instead, it was something that had to be embraced and released. Acer closed his eyes, letting the weight of his longing wash over him. He remembered the woman he had loved, not as a shadow, but as a person who had lived, loved, and died. He remembered her laughter, the way her eyes had sparkled in the sunlight. He allowed the memories to flood him, not as chains, but as part of who he was. The veil began to shift once more, and in the depths of the darkness, he saw a light, a soft, warm glow that beckoned him. It was then that Acer understood the final truth. The veil was not a place to conquer, but to let go of. The desire for what was lost could either consume him or set him free, and as the soul of desire dissolved into the mists, her whisper was the last thing he heard before stepping through the veil and into the light of dawn. His path was no longer one of vengeance. It was a path of release, and as he walked away from the veil of lost souls, he knew that the greatest journey was not one through darkness, but the one into the light that lay beyond. The Hunter's Path Through the Veil of Lost Souls, Part 2: The Abyss of Forgotten Dreams. The dawn broke with a hollow silence, the first rays of light creeping cautiously across the horizon. The hunter, Acer, stood at the edge of the veil, his heart heavy with the weight of everything he had left behind. His sword, still stained with the remnants of the dark realm, now rested quietly against his side. The chill of the morning air felt foreign, as though the world had forgotten how to be warm. He had crossed through the veil, escaping its grasp, but its presence lingered within him, like a shadow that clung even in the light. The soul of desire had vanished into the fog, a whisper on the wind, but the questions she had planted within his mind still echoed. What was the price of release? Acer turned away from the mist-shrouded border and began his journey through the waking world. The veil had shown him many things, but none more important than the truth. Desire was not something to be conquered or forgotten. It was a force that shaped his very existence, but it was also a force that could destroy him. And so, he walked, hoping to find an answer, knowing that no true peace would come without confronting the truths buried deep within his soul. His travels took him far from the borders of the veil, into lands untouched by the spirits of the lost, but peace was elusive. In the villages he passed, he saw shadows of his past, the grief-stricken faces of those who had lost their loved ones, the haunted eyes of those who had never truly lived. Everywhere he went, the air was thick with unspoken desires, dreams that had never been realized, loves that had never been returned. It was as if the world itself had become a reflection of the veil, a place where the dead still roamed, and the living were merely ghosts of their former selves. In one such village, Acer met a woman, whose name was Alara. She was different from the others. Her eyes held a quiet strength, a spark that reminded him of the woman he had once loved. But there was something else, something he could not place. She, too, carried the weight of unspoken desire, a longing that mirrored his own. Their meeting was inevitable. The night had fallen, and as the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the village, Acer found himself standing at the edge of the forest, where Alara waited by a fire. She did not speak at first, but her gaze was steady, like she had been waiting for him. "You've seen it, haven't you?" she said, her voice soft, yet filled with an understanding that only those who had walked through the veil could possess. Acer nodded. "I thought the veil would be the end of me, but it was only the beginning." "Yes," Alara whispered, "the veil is not just a place, it is a passage, and the desire that lies within it does not end when we leave. It follows us. The dreams we abandon, the loves we lose, they all find a place in the world we live." Acer studied her, sensing that she knew far more than she let on. There was a quiet intensity about her, a sense of knowing that came from years of carrying a burden of her own. "I have walked through the veil, and I thought I had left my desires behind, but now I'm not sure what's left of me," he confessed, his voice raw, a ghost of vulnerability slipping through the cracks in his hardened exterior. Ilara's eyes softened, and she reached out, her hand brushing against his. "Desire is not something we can leave behind. It shapes us, just as much as our losses do, but it is not the weight we carry that defines us. It is what we choose to do with it." Acer looked down at her hand, his own trembling ever so slightly as memories of the woman he had lost, of love and grief, of longing and revenge, came crashing back. He realized, as the fire flickered between them, that Alara's presence stirred something within him. She was not the woman he had loved, but she reminded him of what it meant to desire, what it meant to be human. But even as he felt the stirrings of something he had long buried, Acer knew that desire was a dangerous thing. The veil had taught him that much. And in this new world, the world beyond the mist, his desires would have to be held in check, lest they consume him once again. I don't know what to do with it, he admitted, looking up at the stars above, as if searching for some answer. You walk the path of the hunter, Ilara said, her voice a whisper against the night. But the hunter does not always seek to destroy. Sometimes, he must learn to let go. Her words lingered in the air like a haunting melody. Acer felt an overwhelming urge to turn away, to escape from the pull of something he could not name, but the truth was undeniable. The veil had shown him that desires were not things to conquer or abandon, they were part of the journey, a part of him that he could not ignore. I need to know where this path leads, Acer said finally, his voice firm. I need to understand what it means to walk this world and the next. Ilara stood, taking a step closer to him. Her expression was one of quiet resolve, but there was something else, a glimmer of something ancient, something tied to the very forces that had shaped his life. Then let us walk it together, she said. And so, they walked, through forests where the trees whispered of lost dreams, across mountains where the wind howled with the cries of the forgotten, and into the ruins of cities where the past and future were one. Through it all, Acer realized that the veil had not simply been a place of darkness, it was a reflection of the world itself, a place where desires, both sweet and bitter, clung to the living as much as to the dead. The journey was not over, and Acer, though no longer the man he had once been, felt a new understanding stir within him. The path through the veil was not one of isolation, nor was it one of conquest. It was a path of embracing the shadows and the light, the desires and the losses, and ultimately, finding peace not in forgetting, but in accepting the full weight of who he had become. But even as he walked beside Ilara, he could not shake the feeling that the veil had only shown him one side of the story. The rest, his true fate, still lay hidden, waiting to be uncovered. And that, he knew, was the real darkness yet to be faced. The Hunter's Path Through the Veil of Lost Souls, Part 3, The Soul of Shadows. The journey through the wilderness grew darker as the days passed, and the path ahead twisted in ways Acer could not have foreseen. Ilara was always by his side, her presence a constant yet enigmatic source of both comfort and disquiet. They had ventured far from the edges of the veil, but Acer could not escape the feeling that the realm of lost souls still had a claim on him. The deeper they ventured into the land of the living, the more he felt its pull, a tether he could not see but could certainly feel. There were moments, fleeting and elusive, where he could almost hear the whispers of the souls that had been left behind in the veil, their cries stretching out across the fabric of reality itself. Acer had tried to bury the truth within him. The veil had not been a mere passage, nor a destination, it had become a part of him. The desire for release, for peace, was not just about freeing himself, it was about confronting what he had become and reconciling it with the world he now walked. Ilara, though, seemed to know things that he did not. There was an air of mystery surrounding her, as if she had been sent to guide him or to test him. More than once, he caught her looking at him with an expression that seemed to flicker between pity and something more ancient. One evening, as they camped by a riverbank under a sky filled with stars, Acer finally broke the silence that had long stretched between them. Ilara, he began, his voice heavy with the weight of unsaid words. I can feel it, the pull of the veil. It's not just the past haunting me, it's something else. There's something I don't understand, something that keeps gnawing at me. What is this feeling? Ilara gazed into the fire, her eyes reflecting the flames as though they held an understanding that no mortal could grasp. She was quiet for a long time, her face unreadable. Before she spoke, there is more to the veil than you know, Acer. It is not just a place of death, it is a bridge between worlds. When the living and the dead are bound by desire, by grief, by unsatisfied longings, the veil becomes something like a wound in the fabric of existence. And it is that wound that you carry with you now. Acer sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing. A wound? Yes, she continued, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. The veil is a reflection of all that is unhealed, all that is unresolved. Those who cross into it are not simply seeking something lost, they are also seeking themselves, their own deepest truths, and sometimes, what they find there is not a salvation but a dark mirror. The question is not what you lost, Acer, but what you became in the process of losing it. Acer felt a shiver run down his spine. He had thought his journey was about finding peace, about reclaiming what he had lost. But now, in Ilara's words, he realized he had been blind to the true cost of his passage through the veil. He had become a part of the darkness that had once consumed him. Ilara stood slowly, her silhouette framed against the dim light of the fire. The veil doesn't just reflect desires, it creates them, binds them to the souls who pass through it. And those desires, like shadows, follow us, even now. It is shaping you in ways you cannot fully see. What do you mean? Asur's voice was barely above a whisper. The soul of desire that you met, it was not a simple trick, not an illusion. It was a force, a manifestation of all that you seek but cannot have. It is the essence of longing itself. It can show you the past, offer you the future, but it will never set you free. It will consume you until nothing remains but the hunger. Asur's breath quickened. So what am I supposed to do? I don't understand. How do I break free of this? Ilara looked down at him, her face softening with a sadness that seemed to echo from the very depths of time. You cannot break free of desire, Asir. It is what you are, what you have always been, but you can choose how to walk with it. The path you walk now, this path of shadows and lost souls, is not a path to escape. It is a path to accept the very things you fear most about yourself. Asir stood up abruptly, his mind a whirlwind of questions, anger, and confusion. And what if I don't want to accept it? What if I want to destroy it? What if I want peace? Ilara, is that so wrong? She stepped closer, her presence almost palpable in the air between them. To want peace is not wrong, Asir, but to think that peace comes without understanding the nature of desire is to live in ignorance. Desire is not an enemy. It is not something to defeat. It is a part of the world, and it is a part of you. You must learn to walk through it, not against it. Only then will you understand what lies beyond the veil, and what lies within yourself. Asir felt his chest tighten. Her words, though spoken with kindness, were sharp as blades, cutting through the illusions he had clung to for so long. The road ahead was clearer now, but it was a road fraught with something far more terrifying than the unknown, the truth about himself. He nodded slowly, a grim acceptance settling over him. So, the veil is not something I leave behind. It's something I carry. Yes, Ilara said softly, and you are not alone in this. I walk this path with you, just as others have walked it before. The question is not whether you can escape it. The question is whether you can learn to live with it. That night, as they rested beside the flickering fire, Asir's mind drifted back to the veil, the labyrinth of souls, the darkness that had nearly consumed him. It was not just a place of despair. It was also a place of transformation. The souls he had seen there, the ones who wandered endlessly through the fog, had not been lost forever. They had been waiting, perhaps for someone like him to show them the way out, not by escaping the veil, but by accepting their place within it. The next morning, they began walking once more, deeper into lands unknown, their steps steady, yet heavy with the knowledge that there was still much to learn, and much to face. The path before them stretched on, winding and treacherous, but it was no longer a journey to escape darkness. It was a journey to understand it. Asir had walked through the veil of lost souls and had faced its temptations, its horrors, and its desires. But now, he faced something far more difficult, himself. And with each step, he realized that the greatest battle was not against the veil, nor the shadows it cast. It was against the soul that had wandered too long in search of something that could never be reclaimed. It was against the soul that had learned to live in the shadow of desire. The Hunter's Path Through the Veil of Lost Souls, Part 4, The Echoes of the Abyss. The days turned to weeks, and the road that Asir and Ilara traveled grew ever more treacherous. The world around them, once familiar, had begun to warp, as if the very land they walked on was stitched together by the same dark fabric that had once bound the veil. The trees here were gnarled, their roots twisting upward like claws reaching for the sky. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay, and the wind carried a low, mournful howl that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. It was as though the veil had not just been a place in time, but a shadow that had stretched across the realms, seeping into the world of the living. Every step they took seemed to bring them closer to something ancient and forgotten, a darkness that slumbered beneath the surface of existence, waiting to be awakened. Asir began to understand what Ilara had meant. This world, like the veil, was not something to escape. It was something to confront. There was no way to run from desire, no way to outrun the hunger that had shaped him. It was not just a curse. It was his truth. It was a force that had always been inside him, and it had become his greatest companion and adversary. Yet, even as he walked alongside Alara, a sense of unease grew within him. The darkness around them felt different now. It was no longer the quiet sorrow of the veil, nor was it the empty longing of the souls trapped in its fog. This was something far older, something that pulsed with an unfathomable power, an ancient force that seemed to call to him, deep within his soul. One evening, as they camped beneath a sky devoid of stars, a figure appeared in the distance, a shadow against the darkness, moving toward them with slow, deliberate steps. It was a man, or at least, it had the shape of one. His cloak billowed behind him like a storm cloud, his face hidden beneath the hood, but there was something about him, something that felt both familiar and terrifying. Asir's hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his sword, but Alara's voice stopped him before he could draw it. "Do not," she whispered, her tone laced with a quiet warning. The figure approached, his steps almost soundless, the air around him crackling with a strange energy. He stopped just short of their campfire, and for a long moment, there was nothing but silence, broken only by the distant howling of the wind. Finally, the figure spoke, his voice deep and resonant, as though it came from the very earth itself. "You have come far, Asir," the figure said, his words deliberate and heavy with weight. "But the path you walk is not one that leads to peace, it leads to the abyss." Asir's heart raced. He did not recognize the man, but his presence felt like an ancient memory, one that stirred deep within him. "Who are you?" Asir asked, his voice low, though there was an undercurrent of suspicion in it. The figure pulled back his hood, revealing a face that was both ageless and unsettlingly familiar. It was a face Asir had seen only in the depths of his nightmares, a face that seemed to be both his own and someone else's. The figure's eyes were hollow, like dark pits, yet they gleamed with an unsettling light, the kind that flickered like dying stars. "I am the echo," the figure said, his voice almost a whisper now. "The echo of all that was lost, and all that was never meant to be. I am the part of you that has always sought the abyss." Asir's grip tightened on his sword, but Alara stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the figure. "You are no mere phantom," she said, her voice steady, though there was a tremor beneath it. "You are the manifestation of the darkness that dwells within him." The figure, the echo, smiled, a slow, knowing grin that seemed to twist the very air around him. "Ah, Ilara," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "You always understood, didn't you? But it is too late now. The path he walks leads to me, and soon, the hunger will consume him." Asir took a step forward, his pulse quickening. "What are you talking about? What hunger?" "The hunger of the abyss," the echo replied, his voice echoing in the empty space between them. "It is the desire that never ends, the longing that cannot be fulfilled, the desire for oblivion. You have felt it, Asir, even when you thought you were free. You can deny it all you want, but it will always call to you. It is your birthright, your curse." Asir took another step back, his mind reeling. He had thought he understood the nature of desire, but this was something else, something deeper, darker. He had been chasing the illusion of peace, but it seemed the true nature of his journey was far more complicated. The abyss was not just something outside of him, it was something inside of him, a part of his soul that he could never escape. "Why are you here?" Asir asked, his voice strained with frustration. "What do you want from me?" The echo's smile deepened, and for a moment, it seemed as though the world itself had darkened, the air growing colder and heavier. "I want nothing from you, Asir, but I will offer you a choice. You have spent so much of your life trying to escape desire, trying to escape the darkness that calls to you, but you cannot, you never could." He stepped forward, and the shadows around him seemed to writhe, bending toward Asir like 1,000 hungry hands. "Accept the abyss," the echo continued, his voice now a low, seductive murmur. "Embrace your true self, the part of you that desires the end, the oblivion. It is the only way to truly be free." Or, he paused, letting the silence stretch out like a blade between them. "You can continue to fight, and watch as it consumes you, piece by piece." Asir's heart pounded in his chest. The words felt like a test, a challenge to his very existence. And yet, there was a part of him, something deep and primal, that understood what the echo was offering. The abyss was not just a force to fear, it was a place to return to surrender to. But Asir was no longer the man he had been when he first entered the veil. He had faced the darkness within him, and though he had not yet mastered it, he knew he could not give in to it. Not now. Not when he was so close to finding the truth of his journey. No, Aesir said, his voice low but unwavering. I will not surrender. The echo tilted his head, as if amused by Aesir's defiance. Very well, he said, his tone darkening. But know this, the abyss is patient. It will wait for you, and when the time comes, you will see that I was right all along. With a final, mocking bow, the echo faded into the shadows, leaving behind only the cold, empty air. Aesir stood motionless, the weight of the encounter pressing down on him. Elara had not moved since the figure had first appeared, her expression unreadable. What was that? Aesir whispered, though the question was more for himself than for her. Elara stepped toward him, her eyes soft but filled with a quiet understanding. The echo is the manifestation of the abyss within us all. It is the darkness that waits for those who lose themselves in their desires. It is not something to defeat. It is something to accept or to reject. Aesir's gaze drifted to the spot where the echo had vanished, a sense of foreboding settling over him like a dark cloud. The path ahead was no longer just a journey through the land. It was a journey into the deepest recesses of his soul. The abyss had spoken, and it would not be silenced. But Aesir had made his choice. He would walk this path, not as a man seeking to escape his darkness, but as one who would learn to face it, head-on. And as he took the first step into the unknown, he understood something that had eluded him before. The greatest battle was not with the shadows outside, but with the abyss within. The Hunter's Path Through the Vale of Lost Souls, Part 5, The Heart of the Abyss. The days grew colder as Aesir and Elara ventured deeper into the land of forgotten things. The path twisted through an ancient forest where the trees towered like sentinels, their bark gnarled and cracked, as though they had witnessed centuries of sorrow. The air was thick with a silence that felt as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. Aesir could feel the weight of the echo's words bearing down on him. The abyss. It was not just a place. It was a part of him, a shadow that had always been there, lurking at the edges of his consciousness. The more he thought about it, the more he understood. The echo had not lied. The abyss was not something outside of him, something to be conquered or destroyed. It was a reflection of the darkness within his own heart, a hunger that had always been there, gnawing at him, waiting for the right moment to consume him whole. But Aesir was not the same man he had been when he first crossed into the Vale. He had seen the depths of his own soul, had walked through the mist of lost souls, and had faced the weight of his own desires. He knew now that to walk this path was not to flee from the darkness, but to learn how to carry it. Yet, the path before him was not one of simple acceptance. The further they traveled, the more Aesir began to feel a sense of unease growing within him. It was as though the land itself was shifting, warping into something alien, something that did not belong in the world of the living. The very earth seemed to thrum with a deep, ominous pulse, as if something ancient and powerful was stirring beneath the surface. One evening, as they made camp by a wide, slow-moving river, Aesir noticed something strange in the water. The reflection of the stars above was distorted, rippling unnaturally, as if the river itself was not a mere reflection of the sky, but a gateway to something else. A shadowy figure appeared beneath the surface, its shape twisted and distorted, like a lost soul trapped in a prison of water. Elara noticed his gaze and followed it. She was silent for a long moment before speaking. "The river is not what it seems," she said quietly. "It is a mirror, a reflection of the abyss that lies beneath." Aesir frowned. "A mirror? What does that mean?" Elara's eyes darkened as she looked at the river. "The abyss does not just exist within us. It also exists in the world around us. It seeps into everything, even the things that seem most pure. The river, the forest, the land itself, it all bears the marks of the hunger that lingers in the hearts of the lost. If you look closely enough, you will see that everything in this world reflects the same darkness." Aesir sat down beside her, his thoughts swirling. He had never truly understood what Elara meant by the abyss before, but now he felt it, felt the pull of something deeper than desire, something far more ancient. It was as though the world itself was speaking to him, calling to him from the depths, urging him to confront what lay within. Suddenly, the water began to churn violently, as if something beneath the surface was struggling to break free. Aesir's heart pounded in his chest as the figure beneath the water began to rise, its shape more distinct now. It was a woman, pale, with eyes that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, her hair floating around her as though caught in some invisible current. Aesir stood, his hand instinctively reaching for his sword, but Elara stopped him with a firm grip on his arm. "Do not draw steel, Aesir," she warned. "This is not an enemy to be slain." The figure emerged from the water fully, standing before them. She was beautiful, but there was something unsettling about her presence, something that spoke of loss, of longing, and of something that could never be reclaimed. "I am the reflection," the woman said, her voice soft and distant, as if it came from the very depths of the river. "I am the echo of the desires that never die, the hunger that festers in the hearts of the lost." Aesir felt a shiver run down his spine as the woman's gaze met his. Her eyes were hollow, yet filled with a kind of yearning that pulled at something deep within him. "What are you?" Aesir asked, his voice steady, though he felt a growing sense of unease. "I am the shadow of the abyss," she replied, her form shifting slightly as if the very air around her bent to her will. "I am the manifestation of the desires that cannot be forgotten, the sorrow that cannot be healed. I am what you seek when you try to forget. I am the heart of the hunger you carry." Aesir's breath caught in his throat. He understood now. This was not just some specter. This was a part of the abyss itself, a reflection of the darkness that had always lived within him, the desire to forget, the longing for peace, the hunger that he had tried so hard to outrun. "I am the part of you that wants to be free," she continued, her voice now a low murmur. "But you cannot escape me. You cannot escape the abyss. It is you, and it will always be with you." Aesir stepped back, his heart racing. "No," he said, his voice sharp. "I will not let you consume me." The woman's expression softened, almost pitying. "You cannot fight what you are, Aesir. The abyss is not something to be destroyed. It is something to be embraced. You are a part of it, and it is a part of you. Only by accepting that can you truly be free." Aesir's fists clenched. He could feel the hunger rising within him, a terrible, insatiable force that seemed to call to him from the very depths of his soul. But he had come too far to give in now. He had seen the cost of surrendering to desire, to the abyss. He would not make the same mistake again. "No," he repeated, his voice stronger this time. "I will not let you consume me." The woman's form began to flicker, her features twisting into something darker, more grotesque. "You cannot fight what you are," she hissed, her voice now a shrill echo of the abyss itself. But Elara stepped forward, placing herself between Aesir and the figure. Her eyes were resolute, her expression filled with an ancient wisdom that seemed to shine through the darkness. "She is not your enemy," Elara said, her voice calm but firm. "She is a reflection of your soul, Aesir. She is not here to consume you, but to show you the truth." Aesir looked at Elara, confusion clouding his thoughts. "The truth? What truth?" Elara turned to face him, her eyes steady. "The abyss is not something to be feared, Aesir. It is part of your journey. It is the darkness that exists in all of us. To fight it is to fight yourself, but to accept it, to understand it, that is the key." Aesir stood there, torn between the desire to fight the abyss and the understanding that had been slowly forming within him. He had spent so long running from the hunger inside of him, but now he realized that it would never be vanquished. It was a part of him, as much as the beating of his heart. The reflection's form began to fade, her voice lingering in the air like a whisper. "Remember, Aesir, you cannot outrun the abyss. You can only learn to walk with it." With that, she was gone, leaving only the quiet murmur of the river in her wake. Aesir stood there for a long time, his thoughts swirling. He had not defeated the abyss, he had not destroyed the hunger, but he had learned something far more important. The abyss was not something to escape, it was something to understand, something to walk with, side by side. And as the river flowed silently beside them, Aesir knew that his journey was far from over. The darkness was still within him, but it no longer controlled him. It was a part of his soul, and he would carry it with him until the end of his days. The Hunter's Path Through the Vale of Lost Souls, Part 6, The Heart of the Abyss. The land grew darker still, as if the shadows themselves had begun to thicken, wrapping the world in a shroud of inevitability. Aesir and Elara pressed on, their steps now more cautious, for they were no longer simply journeying through a forsaken land, they were walking toward something much greater, something that had always been waiting for them. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence, and as they traveled deeper into the wilderness, Even the trees seemed to grow more twisted, their branches clawing at the sky like dark hands trying to tear open the heavens. The faint whisper of a distant wind was the only sound that accompanied their footsteps, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. Acer could feel the weight of the abyss growing heavier with every step. It was no longer a shadow lurking at the edges of his mind. It was a presence, an undeniable force that pulsed beneath his skin, echoing in his bones. He knew, deep down, that they were drawing closer to the heart of it, the place where the darkness was born, the source of the hunger that had consumed him for so long. And yet, despite the fear that gnawed at him, there was something else, something almost familiar, a sense of understanding, of recognition, as if, in walking toward the abyss, he was also walking toward the heart of himself. Elara had not spoken much in the days since their encounter with the reflection. She walked beside him, her face solemn, but her eyes were filled with something Acer couldn't quite read, determination, perhaps, or something deeper, something born of the same place he now stood on the precipice of. She was not just guiding him through the land, but through something far more intimate, the darkness inside him that she had always known, even when he had refused to acknowledge it. Their journey led them through the remains of an ancient city, its once proud walls crumbling to dust. The broken ruins of statues and columns lay scattered across the ground, half buried beneath the weight of centuries. The air here felt thick, stagnant, as though time itself had stopped in this place, frozen in the grip of an ancient sorrow. In the center of the city stood an altar, a great stone structure weathered by time, its surface worn smooth by the passage of countless ages. The symbols carved into it were indecipherable, worn away by the relentless march of time, but Acer could feel its power. It was here, at the heart of the city, that the abyss had taken root. "This is it," Elara said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "The heart of the abyss." Acer stepped forward, drawn to the altar, his heart pounded in his chest, the pull of the darkness within him almost overwhelming. The hunger was louder here, like a voice calling out from the depths, urging him to give in. He placed a hand on the cold stone, feeling its smooth surface beneath his fingers. The air around him seemed to hum with energy, the power of the abyss vibrating through him. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sensation wash over him. "Elara," he said quietly, "what happens now? What do we do?" Elara stepped closer, her gaze steady. "We face the heart of it," she said. "We confront what lies within us, what we have been running from for so long. The abyss is not just an enemy to be defeated. It is a part of us, a part of this world. It is the root of all desire, of all suffering, and it is what makes us human." Acer felt a shudder run through him. He had never thought of it that way. He had always seen the abyss as something to be feared, something to destroy. But now, standing at the altar, he understood what Elara meant. The abyss was not an external force. It was an internal one, woven into the very fabric of his being, and perhaps, of all things. "The hunger," Acer whispered. "It's not just mine, is it?" Elara shook her head slowly. "No, it's in all of us. It's what drives us. It's what shapes us. Desire, loss, longing, suffering, it all comes from the abyss. It is what connects us to the world, to each other, but it also binds us in chains. To walk this path, to truly understand it, you must confront the abyss within yourself." Acer nodded, though doubt still gnawed at him. The abyss had always felt like a curse, a force he had been trying to outrun, to silence. But now, standing at the heart of it, he realized that it was not something that could be escaped. It was a part of him, and it had always been. He took a deep breath and turned his gaze to the altar once more. It was time to confront what lay within him. As his fingers brushed against the cold stone, the ground beneath them trembled. The air grew thick with the weight of ancient power, and the altar began to glow, faint runes of light appearing along its surface. The hum in the air grew louder, almost deafening, as if the very earth was speaking, as though it had been waiting for this moment. A great darkness rose from the altar, swirling around them like a storm, and Acer felt it, the full force of the abyss rushing toward him. The hunger, the desire, the endless pull to give in. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion, of longing that threatened to swallow him whole. But Acer stood firm. He closed his eyes and let the darkness wash over him. He didn't fight it. He didn't resist. Instead, he allowed it to fill him, to consume him. He embraced it. For the first time, He truly understood. The abyss was not something to be feared or destroyed. It was something to be accepted, to be understood. It was a part of him, a part of all things. The darkness was not an enemy, it was a reflection of everything that made him who he was. And in that moment, Aesir felt the hunger begin to shift. It was no longer a gnawing, insatiable force. It was a quiet understanding, a deep awareness of the balance between desire and restraint. He had come to terms with the darkness within him, and in doing so, he had found a kind of peace. The darkness around him began to dissipate, fading into the air like smoke. The altar's glow softened, and the land around them seemed to breathe again. The world had not been destroyed. The abyss had not consumed them. They had merely confronted it and learned to live with it. Aesir opened his eyes, and for the first time, he felt no fear, no longing, no hunger, only a quiet, profound understanding of the path he had walked and the one that lay ahead. Ilara smiled gently, her eyes filled with a warmth that had been absent before. "You did it," she said softly. "You've learned to walk with the abyss." Aesir looked at her, and for the first time, he felt a sense of clarity. He understood now. The journey had not been about escape. It had been about acceptance. He had faced his own darkness, and in doing so, he had found a new way to move forward. "I have," Aesir said, his voice steady and calm. "And now I can walk forward, knowing that the abyss will always be with me, but it will not control me." Together, they turned toward the horizon, the path ahead stretching out before them. The heart of the abyss had been faced, but the journey was not yet over. There were still many steps to take, many lessons to learn. But now, Aesir walked with a new understanding, one that would guide him through whatever darkness lay ahead. And with Ilara by his side, he knew he would never walk alone.